Hi YouTube. I got a pretty positive response to my NES videos, so I'm gonna continue with the next console. SNES! My Life with Super Nintendo. When I think I was in third grade. Yeah. So I was in third grade when my brother and I pooled our money together and bought a Super Nintendo. Um, I remember, like, I guess they had a sale on it in Target or something, and I don't know. My brother and I pooled all of our allowance money together, which took a really long time because my allowance was extremely meager. Not meager. I mean, for as an 8-year-old back when I was 8, I think it was reasonable. I got $1 a week for doing chores. Hey, why not? I mean, I had a roof over my head. Doing chores for free wouldn't have been bad either. But anyway, my parents were cool, and I thought they taught me the value of money. So my brother and I bought this SNES, and immediately I was like, wow, this is amazing. It has 4 buttons. What? And we got so excited about it. We bought, you know, that was when you bought a console and you got stuff with it. And that was just normal. You know, these days you buy a console, it doesn't come with any games. You're lucky if it comes with one controller. And that's standard. And of course, then you have to think about like how big the hard drive is and blah 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 blah. But back then, when you bought a Genesis or a Super Nintendo, as far as I remember, they came with 2 controllers and a game. And I remember it came with Mario. Yeah, it came with Mario World and 2 controllers automatically, which was awesome. And immediately I fell in love with it. I mean, like, I still played NES games, but I mean, we really got into the Super Nintendo. Yeah, and of course, like, that was back in the day when, you know, you didn't really buy that many games. I mean, obviously not because I was a kid, and, you know, once again, like I said, if I was going to save up enough money to buy a game, like, doing that with my allowance was was pretty hard. You had to put a lot of investment in it. You had to make sure that that was a good game that you bought. So, we rented a lot. And you know, the angry video game nerd always talks about this, and it was the same. We're basically about the same age, so it was the same, you know, for kids back then. Like, you know, I don't even know how stores like Blockbuster is doing in the States. I imagine I don't think they're doing so well. Somebody tell me. I haven't really noted. I've been living in Japan, and the rental stores here. You can't rent video games here. But anyway, so that was kind of what's one thing different that I noticed about Japan. But you can rent like comic books and CDs and stuff, which is interesting. But anyway, I'm getting off track. Yeah. So like I remember the major games that we played early on were Super Mario World, and then we got like right when the original Street Fighter 2 came out, we got that because I was like in third grade, and I remember that when we played that game so hard that the X and the Y buttons on the American SNES controllers, they were ridged, so they came in and they were ridged on the outside. I got the worst blisters on my thumbs from just doing that, and like that was the first time you were really trying to do like combos and stuff on the controllers, and you're like this, you know, sure you can, you know, and that was intense. So like I had some serious hand problems, but you know, I toughened up and I got used to it. And you know, we rented a lot of games, and a lot of them were awful. God, I remember like we rented Home Improvement once. It was awful. Like we played Jurassic Park. It was awful. Like Super Adventure Island. Yeah, you know. But some cool games. Like a lot of my favorite games I knew because we rented, and a lot of my favorite games were. I mean, because I got into Dragon Warrior. My brother's like his friend. This kid was really into like fantasy stuff, and he is the one who was the first kid to bring over Final Fantasy 2 or 4 to our house and like my brother and his friend were like playing it together. It's one player, but well, actually, when you play the original cartridge, both controllers are active. So like if you are good at taking turns, you can both people can control it. But anyway, I used to watch that and I was like, wow, that's so cool. Like they would never let me play, but eventually I got old enough where like they trusted me to play it, and I was like, whoa, this is really cool. Whee! And I was, I was in third grade, so I was old enough to understand the story, and so that's when I started saving up my money, and I went to the used game shops, and I got a copy. This is fourth grade. I got a copy of Final Fantasy II, and like I played the crap out of that game. And then my brother's friend, like when Secret of Mana was released in '93, he brought that game over to our house, and I fell in love with that game so hard. So I was, for my 9th birthday, that is all I wanted. I was like, Mom, Dad, you guys you gotta get me Secret of Mana for my 9th birthday. Please, 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 please. And that was about the time, like, it was released in the Nintendo Power with the big Mana Beast on like the cover came out, and it had like little like clay figures of like the characters, and I was like, I had this fixation on it. Like it was just weird when I was in 4th grade, and I was waiting months and months and months for my birthday to come up in March so I could get this game. So March of '94 is actually when I got it. No, that wouldn't make sense. It was Was it my 9th birthday or my 10th birthday? You know what? I don't remember. It had to have been my 10th birthday. It was '94 because it was right before. Yeah, because that's when our family got a second TV. Anyway, yeah, that's when it was. But anyway, until my birthday came, I was just going nuts over this game. And I would read the same articles like over and over again on my Nintendo Power, and I'd like bring it to school. And if we had inside recess, at this time I lived in Milwaukee, so in the wintertime we had a lot of inside recess because it would just be too cold to go outside. So I'd just pedantically just read this article over and over again. I got made fun of too. I'm not surprised, but like these other kids would pick fun of me a lot. They're like, why do you keep reading like the same article over and over and over again? That's a little weird. And I was like, I'm so excited for this game. Oh my god. And at this point, this is when, I mean, people start, you're going into your pre-teens and you start developing like important social relationships with your friends and stuff. I had such a hard time relating with other girls in my class, and even like my best friend, my next door neighbor, like their family had a regular Nintendo, but like they didn't play games much. Like they were really into playing school or playing house, and I hated that. I hated it so much because like my friend would always be the teacher and she'd always make me be like the student, and I was like, we just got home from school. I don't want to play school. I don't want to play stupid house because I'm a kid and I don't want to act like an adult, and so like, and a lot of girls were just like, let's, granted, I loved My Little Ponies. That was probably my favorite like girly toy that I ever had, but growing up, my brother and I, once again, we just shared a lot of toys, and I got a lot of hand-me-downs and stuff and from my brother, and so, but I mean, that's what I was into. Like, I loved He-Man, I loved Batman, I loved Thundercats, I love Voltron. Like, that was the kind of stuff I was into. So like, when my friends wanted to play like Disney princesses and stuff, like I couldn't get into it. I was like, why don't we just go play Mario or something? And they're like, nah, I don't know. Like, you got that Super Nintendo and blah, blah, blah. And like, this is about the time where the major console wars started, like between Nintendo and Sega. So at this age, like, either you were like in the Nintendo camp or you were in the Genesis camp. Because at that time, like, video games as a mainstay weren't. I couldn't fathom having both current gen consoles at the same time. It didn't occur to me that that's something that you could do. And none of my friends had both of them. You either had Super Nintendo or you had a Genesis. and I would go over to my friend's house and play Genesis sometimes, but I just remember, like, I felt like the controller was really unwieldy for me because I was used to the Nintendo control, so I was like, "Arr." Even though, like, Mortal Kombat and Genesis was far superior to the Super NES version, and, you know, but like, that was another interesting thing, was the console wars. Like, kids would get in fights over the Nintendo's better, Sega's better, oh my god. And that's the time where you had, like, those commercials for stuff coming out. Like, they would show, like, I remember, like, the Sega commercials would show Sonic, like, going really fast, and then it would show, like, Mario Kart, like, going really slow, and they're like, Sega's so much faster, oh my god. But I was like, I don't believe a damn thing you say, Nintendo. And yeah, and I remember, like, in 4th grade, there was a kid in our class who got a Jaguar, and everybody's like, oh my god, that's 64-bit. That's like 4 times more the bit than the 16-bit Genesis with a Nintendo. But I was smart, because I had been reading EGM by that time, and I was like, oh, well, it's just 4 16-bit processors put together. It's not a true 64-bit processor. You can't do that. It's crap. So you just stay with your Genesis, your Super Nintendo. Jaguar sucks. But I still, like, secretly was envious of, like, the kid with the Jaguar. I've never actually played one though, but, you know, he was like, actually it sucks. But yeah, we had the Super Nintendo up until, like, that was the mainstay up until about 1998, I would say, when we got the Nintendo 64. But yeah, until then, the games that I loved on Super Nintendo were, of course, Star Fox! Star Fox! And Link to the Past, and let's see, of course, Secret of Mana, Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 3. Not such a big fan of Mystic Quest, but I had it. And what else did I? Chrono Trigger. Yeah! That is probably my hands down favorite game ever in the entire world. And like, I remember when I heard that the Chrono Break project was canceled, I was like, no. I am one of the few people that I know of, that I know in my video game circle, who ever liked Secret of Evermore. I enjoyed Secret of Evermore. I know it was considered like the weird, illegitimate bastard child of Square America, but I liked that game. Let's see, what else did I like? Mario Kart. Oh yeah, Mario. My brother was an amazing Mario Kart player. Could never beat him, but he doesn't really play it anymore, so I could probably beat him now. But that doesn't count because he wasn't. He's not in top shape anymore. But my brother always used to play Donkey Kong, and I always played Luigi, and like I could never beat him. We'd always play Ghost Valley 1 because it had the huge jump, and I was like, and he could Donkey Kong through that, and I was like, like, I was always more of a tactical game person, and never much of a person who could execute, like, right on the controller very well, so, you know. Also, speaking of, like, that kind of stuff, I love Sim Ant. Sim Ant was one of the weirdest games I think I've ever played, but it was awesome. One game that I never played, but I really wanted to, I think it was called Legend of Legaia? I really, really wanted to play. A strange jewel on the SNES that I borrowed from a friend and I beat was Lagoon. If you like Zelda games and you're like would be willing to put in for a long haul on an old game just for novelty's sake, Lagoon is a good game. I'm trying to think of other like weird but memorable games that I played. B.O.B. Bob. That was like a little platformer, and you play like this robot and you get all these different like guns to shoot stuff. It was kind of like Mega Man. That was a pretty fun game. It was tough too. That was a fun game. But yeah, I'm trying to think, like, those were the major. Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy 4, Final Fantasy 6 were the big ones. And of course, this is before we had a computer. Like, probably until 1997, my family, like, the fastest computer we had was like a 286. We had a 286 and then we had a 386. So like, the only PC games that we ever played were like X-Wing, the original X-Wing. That was about it. because our computer just really couldn't take it. My brother, I remember we did, yeah, when we got like the 286, my brother and I used to fight over like the word processor. Not fight over, but like, okay, I get 30 minutes on the word processor. No, I get 30 minutes on the word processor. I'm like, ah. And like my mom would have to dole out time on the word processor, and we just sit there and write stories. Like, I can't even imagine like kids squabbling over a word processor, but that's just, and that's how life is so different now. It's just really weird to think about. Like, that's when you really rented games to see how they. That was another game that I rented that I loved, Breath of Fire. The first two Breath of Fire games kicked ass. The dialogue just wasn't that great, and it was really classic RPG, but that's kind of why I liked it. If you are into RPGs and you have never played it, don't bother with the fifth one. But definitely the first two, pick those up. You can get them on Game Boy Advance or emulator. But those games I'm a big fan of those. Especially just the first two. Capcom made a decent RPG, and it was really good. Even though like some of the dialogue was really like flat, and because I remember like there was a part where Nina starts like calling Karn by first name, like she knows him really well. She's like, Karn, and I was like, he just joined the party. Why are you so familiar with him? So, yeah. In fighting games, we had Street Fighter 2, we had Mortal Kombat 2. We never had the original one. And then Samurai Showdown. I love Samurai Showdown. That was probably one of the most fun fighting games for me of all time. Was that. And this is, and I think I mentioned my Batman Diaries. Samurai Showdown is actually how I got into Visual Kei as a teenager. Long story, but I mentioned my Batman Diaries, so if you want to hear that story, go to those videos. Alright, well this is getting really long, so I'm just gonna stop here. Alright, and that was my Super Nintendo life. So I guess I'll continue the next video with my Nintendo 64 and PlayStation life.